What's good, YouTube? It's your boy RonnyPugs back again with the Venom movie review. This review will contain spoilers, so if you haven't seen the film, exit the video now and come back after you see the film. So like most of you, I was pretty skeptic going into this film. We knew that it was going to be a Venom without Spider-Man, which is completely inaccurate to his origin. It was going to be in a different universe from Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and we also all saw the Rotten Tomato scores, which that made me beg the question for this review. Is it worth a 30%? And basically with this review, what we're going to be doing is looking at the good of the film first and then ending with the bad, ultimately giving my decision on if this film is really worth a 30% and giving my final rating out of 10 for the film. So regardless, let's get straight into the review. Starting off with the good of the film and something that I think is being overlooked when people go back and review this film, the studio managed to keep Eddie Brock's origin pretty comic accurate despite having limited resource. I'm mainly talking about the lack of Spider-Man in this universe. We don't know if this is going to connect to the MCU yet, but for now all we know is that Spider-Man is not in this universe, and despite that, the studio actually does a good job at keeping Eddie Brock's origin pretty similar to the 616 comics and of course what we saw in Spider-Man 3. In the original 616 comics, Eddie Brock gets fired over a fake news story about the Sin Eater, and of course we see something similar to this in the 90s Spider-Man TV series and Spider-Man 3 where he gets fired for taking fake pictures of Spider-Man. But despite the slight difference in both of those stories, the main thing Eddie Brock wants to do is get back at Spider-Man, and with this film we do get something like that, except Carlton Drake is replacing Spider-Man in all this. Eddie's life takes a turn for the worst when he decides to do the news story on Carlton Drake doing illegal experiments at the Life Foundation, and despite the limited resource, this is still comic accurate considering that he runs a news story that gets him fired and his antagonist ends up being the one responsible for getting him fired. Now the second thing I really like about this film that everybody seems to be talking about is the relationship between Eddie Brock and the Venom symbiote. They managed to humanize the Venom symbiote, if that makes any sense, because throughout the film we see that the symbiote learns about caring about people, he cares about the people Eddie's around, he cares about Eddie on a personal level considering that he can connect with him because he's a loser on his planet as well, and towards the end of the film we see that the symbiote starts to learn between good and bad. And that may be because the symbiote was with another host before Eddie that obviously cared about Eddie, because if you guys know from the comics, the symbiote gets in your head and knows all your memories. That's the reason Spider-Man's spider sense doesn't work against Venom, and that's also why Venom knows who Spider-Man is. So you could say the reason that Eddie and the symbiote work so well is because the symbiote was with another host that cared about Eddie, so obviously when he bonded to Eddie he knew who this was and he knew that he was a good person. And the final thing I really enjoyed about this film before we move on, I won't get into this too much, but I did enjoy watching the film. It was entertaining throughout the entire film. There wasn't any parts in the film where I was bored, and there wasn't any parts in the film where I was mad. However, I do have issues with this film, which is what we will be looking into next. And starting with one thing that I disliked about the film, or what I thought could have been improved upon, we're actually going to be looking at the opening of the film itself. I won't lie, I had a huge smile on my face first time I saw this opening because it was exactly like the 90s Spider-Man show, which is my favorite incarnation of Venom, where the symbiote crashes to Earth via shuttle, but I really think they could have improved upon this. I think a better opening would have been either showing the planet of the symbiotes or the planet that the astronauts found the symbiotes on, and then from there you show a brief scene of what caused the shuttle to crash, and then from there you show what we got in the film. And although I do have a minor complaint in thinking that we should have seen more of the scene, my main complaint comes from the fact that they completely wasted the character of John Jameson. If you guys missed it, the astronaut goes by the name of Jameson in this film, and he's the one that they take away onto the stretcher. But the thing I don't like about this is that the symbiote transfers its energy to another host, and I honestly think it would have been better if John Jameson was going throughout this entire movie traveling to the Life Foundation. This would have made the story a lot more interesting and emotional considering the fact that this is an established Spider-Man character that we've seen in film before, and he has a personal connection to Carlton Drake in this movie. So when we eventually got to the point where Carlton Drake gets the Riot symbiote, we would have stuck with John Jameson throughout the entire film, and it would have been a lot more emotional considering the fact that this is somebody that Carlton knows seeing get destroyed by the symbiote. And moving on from that, my second dislike about this film, and this one's actually kind of minor and it really depends on how you feel about this franchise, but it reminded me way too much of the Amazing Spider-Man films. Everything from the humor to the evil corporation being responsible for everything, it really reminded me of the Amazing Spider-Man films, and that's not necessarily a good thing considering the fact that why would you try to replicate a franchise that failed? The main issue from this comes from the fact that Avi Arad and Matt Tolmach are still attached to these sort of films, and if you're going to do something that's not in the same universe as another film, you need to get new writers and new producers on the film. What really reminded me of the Amazing Spider-Man films in this film is the fact that the Life Organization is responsible for all the villains, just like Oscorp was in the TASM films. In the scene where Eddie was swimming in the lobster tank for whatever reason, it reminded me of Andrew Garfield coming home right after he gets bit by the spider. He wants to eat everything, he's talking really funny, he's paranoid, and that's exactly like the Amazing Spider-Man films. And if you want to distance yourself from those films because they didn't work out, you need to get new writers and producers for these type of movies. The reason Spider-Man works in the MCU is because it's a completely new staff of people making these films, so it's something fresh. It's not the same ideas rehashed over and over, which I got with this film. I felt like I've seen this before, and it's not even with the Amazing Spider-Man films. Carlton Drake in the film, he wants to start human trials as soon as possible, just like Norman Osborn in Spider-Man 1. If Sony wants to continue this franchise and have it be successful, you need to start hiring new people to work on these films so it doesn't look like we're watching the same thing over and over. And the final thing that I disliked about the film that could have been done a lot better, especially if you played Ultimate Spider-Man, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The entire chase sequence on the bike could have been done without the bike. You guys remember in Ultimate Spider-Man where there was the mission with Silver Sable, you were supposed to leap through the city as Venom with your tendrils and everything while the government or S.H.I.E.L.D. tracks you down? That could have been exactly like in the film, but no, a couple minutes before the bike scene happens, Eddie uses the symbiote to swing from another building, and he also uses it as a shield. So why does he have the bike? Could you imagine how much better this chase could have been without the bike? I don't understand why he needed the bike. He could have transformed in the Venom, used the tendrils to swing from building to building, leap from building to building, whatever he was going to do, and it would have reminded us a lot of Ultimate Spider-Man, and I'm sure the fans would have appreciated that scene a lot more than just a bike chase. This entire scene was really dated and it reminded me a lot of the 2003 Daredevil film, and overall, while I don't dislike the scene because I wasn't really bored throughout the film, I think it could have been done a lot better, and it should have been something like Ultimate Spider-Man where Venom's leaping through the city or swinging by his tendrils. And with that, we wrap up my 3 likes and dislikes with this film, and now is the time to answer the question, is this film worth a 30%? And honestly, I don't think it is. It's not Fanforstic level bad, it's not Catwoman level bad, it's not Batman and Robin level bad, it's just alright. It's not groundbreaking, it's not amazing, it's not terrible, it's just alright. And honestly, if Sony wants to move forward with this franchise, I'm looking forward to it, and I think there's room to improve upon. And with that, my final score that I give Venom is a 6 out of 10, where the film isn't amazing, the film isn't terrible, it's just okay, and I would definitely go see the film again in theaters. But anyways, you guys, that's going to do it for the review. Let me know what you guys thought of the video. Also, what would you rate Venom out of 10? And please share your thoughts on the movie down below because I'm interested to hear your guys' take on it. And as always, thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe, follow my social medias, and I will see you guys again in the next video.